everyone. I am Amita from Nourish, a platform for natural and holistic therapies. We are going to be talking about Ayurvedic cooking for holidays. And we have a special guest who is joining me right now, Madison Wagner. She is an Ayurvedic healer, yoga guide who helps her clients to achieve mind, body, and spiritual well-being. She is going to be joining me from Los Angeles, and we will be talking about different Ayurvedic cooking and different things like concept of six taste in Ayurvedic cooking, spices, the key foods that are nectar in Ayurveda, for example, ghee, buttermilk, and a holiday meal, what are the different elements of the holiday meal. She'll be guiding us through that, and also talking about a sample meal, for as per Ayurveda. So all those things we'll be talking with Madison, and hopefully she can join me. So I see her join me right now, and Madison will be just talking about all the Ayurvedic cooking for the holidays. So that's the topic. And there you go. Hi, Madison. How are
Hello.
you?
Good. Sorry, it was so hard to get on.
Great to see you here. Fine. So I was just telling the viewers, it took us a couple of tries, but we are finally live. We're talking about Ayurvedic cooking for the holidays. I know in the holidays, we don't probably have family and friends coming, but we will be at least planning the meal. So joining me, who's already joined, is Madison Wagner. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Madison, before we dive into the Ayurveda cooking.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I'm currently getting my doctorate right now through a school here in Colorado. I live in Denver, Colorado. And, I've always had an interest in food. I was an athlete growing up. I played soccer, I ran track, I did triathlon in college, and was always interested in how food really affects the body and the mind. And I learned about Ayurveda. After I graduated college, I moved here to Denver and did yoga teacher training where I learned about Ayurveda, and I have a nutrition background and was just very interested. It's like Ayurveda is so much deeper than nutrition. It really talks about like digestion and like eating for the season and this knowledge of like eating for your body type. There's just so much that I was really drawn to, and I immediately started studying Ayurveda, and I studied with a few different teachers, and I've been to India 2 times to study and really immerse myself. And so that's a little bit about my journey. I also try to make Ayurveda really accessible for, life looks a little bit different in 2020 because we're not, well, I shouldn't say we're not, but many of us are working from home. Maybe we're just not going out as much. But earlier in 2020 and the last few years when, how do you really apply Ayurveda when you are on the go? And, maybe you just cook for yourself, or you cook for you and your roommate or a partner or spouse, whatever that looks like, or, a family. And how do you apply these ancient principles in a way that really makes sense? So that's what I try to do for myself and for my clients too, is bridge that gap and make it accessible.
Fascinating. I think fascinating. What I find fascinating is that you have a traditional background of nutrition. Like in this country, the nutrition is sort of like used to be a few years back salads. Now of course it has transformed into smoothies and something else, and that happens, right? So nutrition, yoga, and Ayurveda, I mean, it's like as integrative as you can think of. What your background is. So so this particular topic is specifically about Ayurvedic cooking for holidays. So let's talk about Ayurveda talks about six taste, the concept of six tastes. So let's just talk about that, how six tastes are important and how we can, incorporate it in our daily menu or daily meal plan.
Yeah. So the six tastes, that was definitely something that was a game changer for me. Learning about Ayurveda, because I was always like, I'm gonna have something sweet and I'm gonna have something salty. And then I would just go back and forth. And then ended up eating all this food and I was actually never satisfied. So learning about the six tastes and starting to apply that in my food, I think the way that I do it most successfully is really with spices. I think that's such an easy way for people to start to, integrate this Ayurvedic understanding and food into whatever they're cooking. Like, great, start somewhere, like start adding spices. For instance, adding ginger and turmeric, like that's, you're going to be including more of the taste. And, you know, going through the taste. So we're talking sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent. And pungent's going to be like, you know, spicy, like ginger or like chilies or something, jalapeno. And then astringent. Astringent's going to be, many times people don't really know what astringent is, but it's kind of this, has a drying effect. So I think about like pomegranate, you eat it and it sort of like sucks up all the moisture in your mouth. So, yeah, so, you know, including spices again is just a very easy way to incorporate, you know, like planning. When I think about planning an Ayurvedic meal or just planning a meal in general, right? Ayurveda has just been sort of integrated in the way that I do things, but I just simply add some spices. So, you know, like I mentioned, turmeric is going to be, it's going to be more astringent and a little bit bitter. And then, you know, adding something like ginger, it's going to have some of that pungency. So fresh ginger or, you know, dried ginger too. Dried ginger is definitely a lot more hot, way more pungent than fresh ginger. And, you know, adding something like, you know, fennel is going to have a little bit of the sweet taste. And, you know, salty salt, even like celery also has that salty taste as well. And then sour. So, you know, I always love to add a little bit of like lime on top of my meal. So what it, like soup, whatever it is, just add a little bit of lime and then that taste gets in. So
sour part of it. How about amla? You know, the Indian gooseberry, right? That has a lot of taste. I mean, that's like one of the Ayurvedic sort of like a superfood or something, right?
Yeah, definitely. So you know, I don't cook with fresh amla, you know, like amalaki. So, you know, even in like chai prash, you know, in a jam, you can see amla, or like triphala, right? But I use that more like herbally rather than like in food.
Got it. Yeah, I haven't seen Indian gooseberry available here in America, at least fresh, right? That's like, I think indigenous to the India or some of the Asian countries where it's grown. So what other spices can we incorporate? Like you talked about ginger, dry ginger, turmeric, cumin seeds. I don't know if we talked about that, or there's so many different spices, right, that Ayurveda talks about. So like cinnamon and so many, nutmeg, right? So what you're saying is incorporate all these spices and create those different 6 days in any particular day, right? That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah. So in your meals, that's why, you know, it's, you know, when I think about applying Ayurveda to your life practically, it's like there's steps of which to do that. And each person is, you know, some people like want to go full hog wild. And it's like, I'm going to do Ayurveda, I'm going to do the full thing. And some people are like, you know, I like, here's my comfort zone. Okay, then like start with adding some spices. Like that's a great way to do it. And as you mentioned, I like to say like some of the pumpkin pie spices. So, you know, cinnamon, clove, you know, ginger, even nutmeg, even like, you know, cardamom. I think about those. Of course, you can add that into more savory dishes, but I love those in like sweet dishes too. You know, quote unquote sweet. Like they just have that like warming, nourishing aspect. And with that, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Like, you know, for the holidays, a lot of times we cook with those anyways, which is wonderful. Like it's so good for our digestive system, right? In Ayurveda, I know we really focus on digestion and eating things that are going to be easily digestible. And just, you know, support, like digestion supports mind, body, health completely. So the more that we take food that is easy to digest and nourishing and truly healing, the better we'll feel day to day. But, you know, going back to the spices, like cumin seeds or cumin, these things can be really helpful. And, you know, even in, I would say in different cultures, right? You know, Ayurveda does not necessarily have to be just Indian food, right? We can still apply these principles to a lot of other sort of, you know, influences. For instance, you know, like Mexican food, it's you know, they use cumin. They use jalapenos. It's like, you know, we're still using these things that can be so supportive for our digestive system.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I think Mexican food is very close to, you know, using spices like we are talking about, using different taste. yeah, of the different taste of food. Even Chinese food in a very their own way, right? I mean, they're not using Indian spices like cumins and stuff. I've never seen cumin seeds, in the Chinese food, but they have their own system of adding all the taste. Like if you buy any kung pao chicken or any of the chicken dishes, they always have vegetables, right? It's not only the chicken.
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes they'll have peanuts, so they have all these combinations and try to create it in one dish.
Yeah.
The idea is the same of creating different taste in one dish.
Yeah. Yeah. And we haven't talked so much about I've talked a lot about spices, because again, I think that can be a really easy way to start to incorporate the different tastes, but also, food, absolutely. Like food, for instance, like a sweet potato is going to be sweet. It's going to be nourishing. A lot of times this time of year, like we see sweet potatoes, because they are more grounding, like they grow on the earth, right? You talk about more like, not a root vegetable, but like root vegetables that are like more grounding and heavy. And so, nourishing this time of year. But even looking at something like, like rice, right? Again, rice is going to have that like sweet nourishing, greens. So I'm a huge fan of even like beet greens. So I use the beets and then use the greens too. Greens are going to have a little bit more of that bitter,
That's right. All the greens are bitter. The kale and the spinach and all these, they all have the bitter taste. So you throw in the bitter taste of it. What about pungent? How do we incorporate the pungent part?
Yeah. So pungent, again, doing something like jalapeno or Thai chilies or like the ginger, right? Ginger is going to have that pungency.
Ginger is kind of pungent,
Yeah. So, if you can tolerate a little bit of spice, put even just a little bit, something like that can be really helpful in your food. Let me see here. And then we like astringent, I mentioned pomegranate, like turmeric. Turmeric's such an easy one. It's so good. In the last few years, like turmeric's such a superfood. And, in Indian cooking and Ayurveda, we've been using it medicinally, right? What we eat, each meal could be medicine. So using that medicinally, and then sour taste, like yogurt is going to be more sour. Things that are going to be fermented are going to be more sour. And let's see, like I mentioned, like a little bit of lime. Like, easy to add.
Yeah. So let's talk about the superfoods in Ayurveda. Ayurveda talks about ghee. Ayurveda talks about buttermilk. So what are some of the key superfoods according to Ayurveda that are nectar for our body? Let's talk about the significance of that and from an Ayurvedic perspective.
Yeah. So ghee, as you mentioned, is so wonderful. Some of the main benefits that I speak of with ghee is one, it is full of vitamins and it's really good for the bones. It also, we can call it like nectar. It's pure fat, and it's so good, and especially this time of year when there is a lot more dryness. Here in Colorado, it's like come fall, your skin is just so dry. So super important to, have that unctuousness, like that oiliness. And we talk about ojas, and ojas is immunity and its vitality. And ojas is created as a byproduct of good digestion. And ghee can help produce more ojas, and it's like when we have a glow, and we just have this like vitality and immunity that really comes from our food and like good digestion. And let's see here, and as far as, and what's so fascinating about ghee is it has something called butyric acid in it, and that is essentially for our gut microbes, it's a friendly acid, and it like helps to promote good gut health too. So that's super important. And then also buttermilk. So buttermilk, again, going back to the gut, like it's gut brain connection, and Ayurveda's so talked about this for so many years. And buttermilk is used to support that, so it can be used medicinally, and it can also be included in the meal. So just a little bit of buttermilk. You can also add some spice if you like. So if you wanted to add a little bit of cumin, or if you wanted more of like that, like the sweet option, more of like the pumpkin pie spices, you could certainly add like a little bit of cardamom, a little bit of cinnamon, and mix that and like take a little bit after a meal. So those are wonderful ways to, again, just to support your gut.
I think that's great. So let's talk about a sample meal, right? A holiday meal. So from breakfast to I saw on your Instagram page, you have amazing recipes. I mean, on your website. So maybe let's talk about a sample breakfast, lunch, and maybe dinner. And what should the diet include, right? And what should we avoid, especially for the holidays?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we can certainly go through a sample meal, and I would say it really depends on each person and each
Yeah,
individual. Like, it depends on where we are in this like healing process.
yeah.
But we can kind of just do like a general standard.
Yeah,
It's
general
fall.
standard meal, and I'm
Yeah,
having my warm tea at the same time when we're talking about the food.
perfect. What kind of tea do you have?
This is an Ayurvedic tea. I put all kind of spices that you and I are talking about. Yeah, triphala, cumin, you name it, fennel, cinnamon. And then in the morning, I boil it with ginger and turmeric
Yeah,
roots. And then I boil it with warm water, and I sip it all day. And that's what keeps my energy going.
yeah, I love that. I love tea so much. Just
Yeah,
warm
yeah,
liquids.
yes.
I don't right now. I just have room temperature water, but I love the teas. Wait, you put triphala in there? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, I do.
Mm,
I do put triphala in there because triphala is so amazing. It has all the three fruits that Ayurveda talks about, so I put that in the morning. Yeah,
yeah. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, like triphala it's hard. It's a little too like a little too bitter, but maybe do you just do a little pinch or do you do a bit?
just a little pinch, just a little
Okay,
pinch.
perfect.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
like it can be a lot. Okay, so yeah, going back to the meals. So I would say, breakfast, something like a stewed apple is a
Hmm.
go-to. It's easy to digest. Well, I should say first before that, starting your day with 2 glasses of just plain hot water. One of
Yeah,
my teachers talks about how this is like, the dump truck in the body and can just get everything moving and
yeah,
just start fresh. Instead of having tea or coffee or something, just start with 2 glasses of plain hot water. Um,
yeah.
and then after that, for breakfast, doing something like stewed apples. So
Okay.
again, adding those like pumpkin pie spices. So cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, dried ginger, if you like, a little bit of cardamom. I'm a huge fan of cardamom. I think it's
Yeah.
just so tasty. So adding a little bit of that, if you wanted to do some sort of a little bit more bulking, it depends on your digestion, but maybe you want to do like a rice porridge with the
Yeah.
apple. So you could, just do rice, add lots of water, make it sort of like
Mhm.
a congee. So it's like very porridgey,
Yeah.
with the spices that we talked about. Or, if you can digest, maybe if you need something a little bit heartier, depending on your
Hmm.
digestive system, maybe something like oats. So maybe like steel cut
Hmm.
oats or just oats. That's another option.
Hmm.
So yeah, so there's a breakfast. And then for lunch, ideally in
Hmm.
Ayurveda, we have lunch as our biggest meal. So if you're planning your day, if you can make lunch really a full, very nourishing meal and, make that the biggest meal of the day, that would be wonderful. Um,
Hmm.
I am a huge fan of soups because they're so easily digestible.
Yeah. Yes.
So, if, we can talk about a few different ideas. So hopefully people can, you know,
Yeah.
sort of navigate and see what works for them. But I like to try to eat my protein in a soup.
Hmm.
So, for me, I'm mostly vegetarian, I'm not completely vegetarian. And, I
Yeah.
think there can be a little bit of misconception with Ayurveda that, in order to eat Ayurvedically, you have to eat vegetarian.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
really depends on your digestive system and
Yeah.
what works. I'm actually
Right.
just almost 8 weeks postpartum, and I suffered from Bell's palsy.
Oh.
The whole left side of my face was completely
Oh.
paralyzed, and through Ayurveda and using acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, I was able to heal in just a few weeks, which is honestly profound. But in
Yeah.
that healing journey, I did add some meat in because it was helpful. Postpartum, so you are very weak. This
Yes.
time of year, it can be a better time of year to add um,
Yeah.
a little bit of meat. Again, if you eat meat, if not, no big deal. But
Yeah.
I like to do like some sort of like a stewed meat. So um, yeah, like so in a soup or like kind of slow cooked. If that's not an option, then doing something like I'm a huge fan of mung beans because they're so
Yeah.
easy to digest. So
Yes.
making like a simple mung bean soup or even like a lentil soup or
Hmm.
a dal soup. So there's a few options to get to
Yes.
navigate getting protein.
Yeah.
Um, for like a more traditional holiday meal, doing something like, getting vegetables in. Have you heard of Divya Alter before?
I'm sorry, what?
Divya Alter. She's a chef. She has a
Oh,
restaurant.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love her cookbook. It's amazing.
Yeah.
She has this wonderful recipe for and her restaurant's called Divya's Kitchen, and she has this amazing recipe for its beets with green beans. So both are cooked, and you can add, like a fresh ginger juice with a little bit of lime, a little bit of olive oil, some a little bit of hing. We haven't talked about hing yet, but hing is a wonderful spice to promote digestion. It kind of has a more of that like pungent sort of oniony, garlicky taste. So for those who might have issues digesting onion and garlic, it's a wonderful substitute.
Hing, right?
Hing, yeah. Ask the petita hing.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So yeah, that can be really wonderful. And let's see here. So doing that for so that is like the vegetable dish. It's absolutely wonderful. And then something like on the side, doing some sweet potato with the spices, so more of like the sweet spices like I mentioned, like the cinnamon, ginger, cardamom, nutmeg, clove. So adding that in, I one of my aunts, she makes this wonderful, it's like a sweet potato dish with a little bit of coating. So there's some flour, some sugar, and some nuts on top. But I've in the past tried to Ayurvedify it, meaning instead of using butter with the sweet potatoes, I add ghee. And mix that in the bottom, and then on top I'll make a topping with you can do something like pecans, which is pretty traditional. Again, more ghee, lots of ghee. Adding a little bit of flour. So, Divya introduced me, through her cookbook, I was introduced to einkorn flour, which is a non-hybridized wheat, which is much easier to digest. So those who do have some digestive difficulties, I found that it can be way more supportive for those individuals. So mixing that on top, and then, getting the ghee in there too, and then laying that on top, and then you can bake it. So kind of a wonderful sweet potato dish. So we've got, our protein, you've got the two different vegetables. And then on the side, if you wanted to do some sort of like an herbed bread, if you do make bread, or even like a flat bread, a lot of times, I'll use like chapati or even like a tortilla. So something like that on the side, or some sort of rolls, if that's traditional. You can always add, like I said, fresh herbs in there, which can again help with digestion. So something like sage, a sage ghee roll, something like that would be delicious.
That sounds amazing. That sounds really amazing. I love the way you kind of created this whole beautiful meal in like a couple of minutes, and I'm going to try the sweet potatoes that you're talking about. That sounds really yummy, and also full of all the nutrients, right? Sweet potatoes are so amazing with all the little herbs that you talked about. Anything else that we should avoid? Yeah, we didn't talk about that. We talked about, warm, well-cooked, spiced foods that you're talking about, soups you're talking about the spices, right? Ginger, black pepper, cinnamon, cumin. What should we avoid during the holidays?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, and I think it's so funny because, like I would say, I call it Western nutrition, but in Western nutrition, there's this understanding that smoothies are so good for you. Like, eat your smoothie for breakfast, put all your raw greens in and blend it up and eat it. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's actually like so hard to digest. It's really like,
I tried doing that, and I was like, a few months back, and I was all this smoothie, and I bought this whole machine with the smoothie maker, and I'm like, I'm not losing any weight. I'm feeling so bloated. It was so horrible. I can't tell you.
Yeah. It is. I think it's so interesting. I think we really need to listen to what our bodies can digest. Like I talked about earlier, it really depends on you and your body. And here's a general place to start, but it's like, what is your experience and what does your intuition tell you? Like, is this actually supportive for you, or is this poison? Because food for me could be medicine, and for you, the same thing could be poison. So we really need to be conscientious about our own bodies, and we know our bodies best. So it's super important. But some key things to avoid are anything that's like dry, crunchy, like snacks, popcorn, chips. Those things they're just more drying. And again, this time of year, essentially it can be like poison to the body. So, avoiding those sorts of things. Crackers too, again, can be just really drying. And yeah, salads, even when you're preparing your holiday meal, a lot of times, a salad is pretty standard. So maybe looking at, instead of having a salad, maybe like cooking your greens. A little saute is wonderful. Again, add a little bit of spice in there. Beautiful, easily digestible. So those are some key things to avoid. I think, think about more well-cooked foods. Things, soups, stews, roasting vegetables, sauteing. I'm a huge fan of the Instant Pot. Do you use the Instant Pot or some sort of?
I do. Yeah.
That's amazing. It just makes life so much easier. Like this morning, I started a lentil soup with vegetables, and when I'm ready to eat, it'll be ready for me.
Yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, especially in US or Western countries, we have this salad, like a raw salad, right? We're so used to it, eating a raw salad, but and sometimes, a lot of times you go to the restaurant, that's a meal, right? A raw salad with all kind of things in it. And that's not really good for you, easy to digest for you. And what you're saying is absolutely right. Like if I go to Whole Foods, they have cooked salads now, right? The quinoa with the all kind of things going in. And that's what you really need to be. All of us need to be focusing on the cooked foods, like Madison is suggesting.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, staying away from cold, it's hard to, I mean, when I go to Whole Foods, I try to navigate towards like the hot buffet area. And if I'm picking something up versus like the cold, because even the cold, so even if it's cooked and it's cold, that's not necessarily supportive either. And another concept in Ayurveda is eating fresher foods. So, we talk about prana. So if you're familiar with yoga or Ayurveda, you've heard this word prana perhaps. And prana is life-giving energy, and fresh food gives us the prana. And prana is this cellular intelligence that tells our body how to heal. Yes. And it's just profound what a difference, if you were to prepare fresh food each day versus eating a lot of like leftovers, and if leftovers are just the only option that you have, maybe cutting it back instead of meal prepping for the whole week, like prep food for like 1 to 2 days. And reducing that time frame.
That makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Madison, for being with us. These are a lot of amazing tips. I mean, she's shared the entire menu with all of us. And try something what she's suggesting. I think I'm going to try your sweet potatoes for sure. They sound really yummy and nutritious. Anything else you'd like to add before I wrap up? I just want to thank you so much for being with us and sharing all these tips. Madison, anything else you'd like to add before I wrap up?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me, and I love to talk about Ayurveda and just share tips that can be like easily accessible and really help change the trajectory of your health too. So thanks so much for having me. It's nice to connect.
And we hope that we can together bring awareness of Ayurveda, to the Western society. And yoga and Ayurveda together can be beautiful, like you were saying. Yeah.
And also the meditation, but they go so well hand in hand together. You talk about mind, body, spiritual health. I say that, there's nothing more comprehensive. There's nothing that is a better way to prevent illness than, Ayurveda's got all these amazing signs. Like if you are having gas and bloating and indigestion, then that means your body's not digesting. And try to navigate through some of these foods that we talked about today and see if that helps you. Like cook your foods. Simple is amazing. I think there's such a misconception. Like it doesn't have to be this huge thing. Put lentils in your Instant Pot or crock pot with water, a few vegetables, a few spices. Like it can be very, very simple and really help your healing tremendously.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Madison, for being with us. To all the viewers, thank you for watching. Please help us share these sessions and let us know the topics that you would like to see. With that, I'd like to wrap up the session. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.